Americans will have to rely on their savings to fund their retirement, but financial stress may be making it hard for many workers to save.
A lot of people are financially stressed. Are you financially stressed? Well, you're not alone.
Apparently, Americans are quickly running out of money. In fact, with the personal savings rate now at a 20-year low, Social Security reserves are set to be completely depleted in the next 8 years. If nothing is done, well, today we're breaking this down and exposing the unbelievable truth that the government, politicians, and system don't want you to know. The fact is, this entire thing is a ticking time bomb. Most people have no idea where their money is really going, and if you just realize how badly you were potentially getting ripped off, then, well, I guess you're about to find out right now. So get ready for this to blow your mind. Although, really quick before we start, as usual, if you appreciate videos like this that could sometimes take me weeks to put together, all I ask in return is that you hit the like button or subscribe if you haven't done that already. It really makes a huge difference for me and the entire channel. And it's free, so thank you so much. All right, so to start, let's just get this out of the way. Over the last few years, there have been numerous articles all saying the exact same warning that Social Security is running out, that there's not going to be enough money left over to pay you how much you're owed. And if something isn't done right now, we're all okay, that last part might be a bit dramatic, but it's not too far off from reality. We are all forced to pay into a system that at some point in the future is very likely to be insolvent. So why is this happening and what could you do about it? Well, for those unaware, think of Social Security a bit like this. Every time you go and work, a chunk of your paycheck goes to pay the government, another chunk goes towards medical and unemployment insurance, and 12.4% goes for the purposes of Social Security, typically split evenly between you and your employer. Essentially, the broad concept here is that most people can't be trusted to save for their own retirement, so the government does it for them by taking a chunk of every paycheck, investing it on your behalf, and then giving you money back later in life when you might need it. Seems reasonable, right? Well, wrong, and here's why. See, Social Security started initially after the 1929 Great Depression. To prevent older Americans from starving in poverty, in 1935, the Social Security Act was created, and by the 1950s, it became common practice to receive Social Security. However, there was one glaring issue. When the concept of receiving Social Security at 65 was initially created, the average life expectancy was just 58 years old. So as people began living longer and longer, it created a really unique problem of going broke. Now, you would think that this system takes your money from your taxes, puts it into a special account that belongs to you, and then, when you're older, you could begin withdrawing from your account. But it doesn't work like that. Instead, your money goes towards paying out current retirees. And by the time you retire, future workers will contribute their salary to pay you. By the way, fun fact, the first person who received Social Security worked for just 3 years and contributed a total of $24.75. This allowed her to collect almost $23,000 in Social Security payments before she passed away at the age of 100. Now, in a perfect system, incomes increase, payroll taxes go up, and the population grows enough to be able to keep up with what Social Security needs to stay funded. But it's not. Instead, population growth is slowing down or even declining. Incomes are barely keeping up with inflation, and in less than 10 years, the real problem begins. As of now, it's said that without any changes, the Social Security Fund is slated to be drained by 2033, which would result in an automatic 21% cut to beneficiaries' monthly checks, regardless of marital or income status. To make matters worse, it's reported that older people are expected to outnumber children for the first time in U.S. history by 2034. There will be fewer workers to support each retiree in the future. As a result, essentially, we don't have enough workers paying into Social Security to fund the full benefits of baby boomers, which means that everybody else gets less, especially as more baby boomers are starting to retire. So unless something is done very quickly, Social Security reserves are going to be running out, and that most likely means we're going to see a combination of the following. 1. Social Security benefits are going to be reduced by the time all of us are older, most likely to the tune of 21 to 25%. 2. They increase the retirement age so that they pay out less money. For example, instead of taking retirement at 67, maybe they force you to take it at 72 instead. 3. The government could just tax you more to be able to pay for Social Security that's running out. And if you think that's impossible or not going to happen, think again. According to CNBC, the last time Social Security faced a reserve deficit was back in 1983. And it was resolved through an agreement that raised the full retirement age from 65 to 67. Well, guess what? Back then, the average life expectancy was 74.6 years, and now it's 79.5. So it would make sense that they try to push back the retirement age again, right? Yes, do this same for alongside with it. In addition to that, a recent proposal would increase Social Security taxes on those making over $400,000 a year. Will inflation push up the top earning Social Security recipients to almost $5,000 a month? In terms of how much of a tax increase we could see, the Social Security Board of Trustees recently said that we'd either need an immediate reduction in benefits of about 13% or an immediate increase in the combined payroll tax rate to 14.4%, or some combination of these changes to allow full payment of the scheduled benefits for the next 75 years. Basically, there's no situation here where you don't pay more in tax, don't retire later than you were initially promised, or don't get the full benefits that you thought you would get. So how badly is everybody getting ripped off? All right, so in terms of how badly you're getting screwed by Social Security, let's assume you make an average annual income of $770,000 and contribute 12.4% of those earnings every year from the ages of 25 to 65. According to our compound interest calculator, that works out to be $868 a year. And if you manage to get a 6% return on your money, which is on the low end of the last century, that works out to an ending balance of $1,513,000 by the time you're 65. This means that you could theoretically withdraw 4% a year or $5,000 a month without ever running out of money. Or you could get $2,400 a month from Social Security instead. Yeah, I'm being completely serious. In this circumstance, the money you contribute to Social Security pays out less than 50% of the worst stock market returns we have ever seen over the last 100 years. Or, I guess, put another way, in order for these numbers to match, you would have to get an average annualized return in the stock market of 3% over 4 decades, which would make you one of the worst investors of probably all time. On top of that, realistically, even if the stock market generates an average 8% annualized return over 40 years, which is still below the historic average, you would have $2.6 million in retirement, which should safely generate about $8,600 a month in income compared to the $2,400 a month that's promised by Social Security. Crazy, right? Okay, now in fairness, Social Security is not meant to be a one-to-one return. Your contributions end up supporting the greater function of our economy for the people who aren't fortunate enough to make enough to be able to contribute enough. And inevitably, some people are reliant on these social safety nets to stay afloat. But why does it seem like the government just gets such a bad return on our money? And why do a lot of people on Reddit seem to think this is outright theft? Well, if you take a step back, I think it's worth acknowledging that Social Security was never meant to be compared to an investment account. And at the end of the day, I guess it's more similar to insurance, where yeah, you're probably going to pay out more than you receive. But if you need it, you're going to be really glad it's there. For example, car insurance. Best case scenario is that you pay a few hundred a month for insurance and never use it. But if you get into an accident, it's going to more than pay for itself. Well, Social Security is a bit the same way. Sure, you could get a higher return investing the difference yourself, but let's be real, most people have absolutely no idea how to manage their own money. Half of Americans have absolutely nothing saved for retirement whatsoever. And for those between the ages of 50 to 54, only a third have more than $100,000. So yeah, for the average person, it's a good deal because they would have no idea how to properly invest on their own. For those who need the insurance, it's a safety net just in case. And for those who have the discipline to invest the difference consistently over a long period of time, yes, they would be better off without it. However, regardless of how you feel, the problem still remains that the entire system isn't working. It's drastically underfunded, and something has to be done so that by the time you start collecting, the money's actually there. So what's going to happen? I hate to say it, But realistically, I have a feeling that in order to keep Social Security afloat, there's going to be higher taxes in the future and most likely a delayed retirement age so that there's fewer people drawing on those reserves. Yes, it screws younger people who currently work and have to pay more for less than what other generations get. But what's the alternative? The way I see it, neither political party wants to be the one that cuts the benefits. So the most likely outcome from this is that they push it off as long as possible, wait until the last possible minute, and then blame the other side for not wanting to fix it sooner while motioning to tax the rich for not paying their fair share. Even though it sounds like I'm joking right now, I'm actually pretty serious, and I bet we could look back on this 10 years from now and see that everything I just said came true. Especially when you consider that right now you're only required to pay Social Security taxes on the first $168,000 of income. So anything above that amount is completely exempt. For now, because I have a feeling eventually they're going to bump that number higher. Although in terms of what you can do about this and how to prepare today so that you don't become another statistic, here's what you need to know. Personally, I never think it's a good idea to rely on the government for your money in lieu of taking personal responsibility for your finances. It's just too risky. Instead, it would be much better to live below your means, invest consistently, learn new skills to increase your income, and then do that consistently over decades. This way, you're not going to need to rely on Social Security. You could still make way more money by investing on your own. And if you do get Social Security later in life, it's just icing on the cake. Now, of course, in terms of how much money you need to retire on, that's the million-dollar question, quite literally. So to figure that out, we're going to work backwards and assume that you want to replace the median income here in the United States of $50,000 a year. Generally speaking, the rule of thumb here is that if you invest in a broad index fund, you could withdraw 4% annually throughout retirement without running out of money. So that would mean that you need $1,250,000. But because sometimes life happens, let's bump that up to $1.5 million. So here's exactly how much you need and at what age to be able to get there. If you're 20 years old, you're going to need to invest $416 a month or $5,000 a year. And by the time you're 60 years old, you'll have just over $1.5 million. Even better, if you do this in a Roth IRA, all of it's going to be completely tax-free. However, if you wait to start at 30 years old, you're going to need to invest $940 a month or $11,400 a year to reach that same $1.5 million by the age of 60. And if you start at 30 years old, you'll need to invest $120 a month or $1,400 a year to reach that same $1.5 million by the age of 60 at 40 years old. You'll need to save $2,300 a month or $28,000 a year just to be able to reach that very same amount. Ideally, if you take control now, you're going to greatly outperform what you would have gotten with Social Security to the point where later in life, after a few decades, if you don't get it, it's not going to make that big of a difference. Although in terms of my own thoughts and the idea that Social Security is theft, here's what I think. On the surface, yes, Social Security is an inefficient system. But as much as you could fault how it works, comparing it to an investment account is incorrect thinking. The reason for this is that Social Security funds aren't invested in the stock market or in equities that could rise or fall a substantial amount in a short period of time. Like, can you just imagine what would happen if retirees needed their money while the stock market falls 40% over a few years and all of it was invested in the QQQ? That would be an absolute disaster. This is why all of your money is invested in treasuries, which sure, they make less, but they're also guaranteed to be there when you need them. Or, I guess, put another way, it's kind of like this poster saying savings accounts are a scam because they only pay 4% while the stock market's up 30%. That's just not accurate thinking because the two are entirely different. And a savings account has a completely different purpose than investing. The same applies to Social Security. All of that is invested in safe, stable assets that are guaranteed to be there when you need them. And they really just earn inflation, plus maybe an extra percent, which isn't much, but at least it's guaranteed. Yes, this does mean that some people get more than they contribute, and other people get less. But it's really no different than paying property taxes for a school you never use, or paying state income taxes for a road that you never drive on. There's just got to be some give and take with everything. And let's be real, if the government is in charge, it's probably not going to run as efficiently as it could. That's why I have a feeling if you watch my channel right now, you probably manage your money better than most people. And to you, Social Security seems like an absolute ripoff, and rightfully so. But other people rely on it, and in retirement, it helps. At the end of the day though, no, I don't think it's going away anytime soon. And the realistic outcome is that over time, taxes either have to go up or you end up taking Social Security at a later age and retiring later than expected. It's not the ideal scenario, but that's what's most likely to happen, and that's how I plan around it. All of this is a perfect reminder that even though the government is there, you're going to go much further on your own by investing consistently, living below your means, and, no matter what, hitting the like button and subscribing if you haven't done that already. Thank you guys so much, and until next time.